time to be with us for this webinar. And particularly, I'd like to thank the parents who have sent in their questions. They're very good questions. I hope we're going to get to them all before we're done. First, we have a question from Samantha. She says, my child is 2 years old. He's now showing that he can read, recognizing sight words without a picture. He quickly says whatever words I show, even ones I have not taught him. I didn't think I would get to this point so quickly. What should my next step be before he gets bored? Well, first of all, Samantha, you've obviously done a great job because, you know, you're in a great place when your child is already intuiting new words that he hasn't seen before. That's just wonderful. So congratulations on the job you've done up to now, because it sounds like he's doing great. You're very smart to say, well, you know, I want to stay a few steps ahead of him, because if I don't, you know, he may get tired of what I'm doing, because it's easy for you and I. We like a nice rut. We like to do the same things day in and day out and feel comfortable with what we're doing. But for a kid, they get up every day and what's new? What's next? Let's move on. They don't want to stay in the same place. So you're right to ask this question. I think the answer to this question is almost certainly new material. You probably want to add new words more rapidly. Maybe whatever frequency you're using right now, if it's 3 times a day for 5 days, maybe you drop that frequency to 3 times a day for 3 days, and then 2 times a day for 2 days. So you can start to drop the frequency as the pathways grow. As the visual and auditory pathways are used, then they grow. And when they grow, then the dynamic you're going to change most rapidly would be the dynamic of frequency. You're going to keep the intensity, the word's big, but you can start to drop frequency. The other big answer, and maybe this is a longer range answer to your question, is books. Because really what's in it for your kid is a book. And it doesn't matter whether he's a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, or an 80-year-old. The end goal is a book, because that's where the pleasure is. So you can make right now, if you haven't done so already, you can start making single word books. And that can be a way of introducing 10 new words. And those books are made so you have a single word, then you turn the page, there's the picture. Then another single word, turn the page, there's a picture. So single word books, you could be making couplet books. You could make 3-word phrase books right now. So start making books. And of course, the simple books will have a shorter shelf life. Maybe there'll be books he'll look at for a few weeks and he's done with them. The books that actually have a story and a beginning, a middle, and an end, he will certainly develop a love for those books, and those books may have a much longer shelf life. But the trick here is to have many books. And these, of course, are homemade books. You're going to make them yourself just for him, and you're going to develop a beautiful little library of these books. Some of them, the brand new ones, you're going to keep as surprises, but once you've introduced a book to him, then it goes on his shelf, and he can come back to that shelf. Maybe you're doing something else or making new materials. He's got his books. He can go and read those books. So that's really the big answer. The big answer is you'll never lose with a book. That's for sure. So keep up the good work and tell us how you do. Mother says, my daughter is 5 years old. She loves reading. I started with the cards with single words with her 3 months ago, but she also reads words by herself and sight words, and she loves books. She was doing books even before we started the program. How do I strike a balance between your reading program and reading books that she already loves? Well, there shouldn't be I wouldn't think of it as striking a balance. I think your daughter's 5 years old. She's going to want books. So I would actually work in the other direction. I would start with the book. I would go to the library, get all the books that you think will interest her, take her with you, have her choose the books. And these may be books that are at a third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade level or higher. Let her choose based on the content that interests her. And then take those books home. And you are going to steal the content and make homemade books for her out of those books. You're going to say, okay, here are the 20 brand new words in this book that she doesn't know. Then you can teach those words and keep those words actually tucked in the back of that book. Then you steal the content from the commercial book, bump up the print size, hopefully on the word processor, makes it much easier. And this way, you can supply her with wonderful books that are much higher level material, but also big print size. Because right now, I suspect, if you were only confined to those books that have the correct print size, commercial books with the correct print size for your child, the content is going to be too low. It's going to be too predictable. It won't be the thing she wants. So right now, everything has to be driven by what she likes. If she likes ballet and dancing and flowers and whatever it is, you find out, make a list of the things she loves the best. And then that's what you're going to go on the hunt for. And also, of course, if you're a creative person and you love to write, then start writing books for her. The other thing you can do is have her dictate a story to you. Then you write it down and make a beautiful book out of it and keep adding to that book. I remember one of our kids, when she was about 4 or 5, she started dictating books to her mom, and it became a series, 10 books, and then it became 20 books. And then she actually started writing the book. She had a baby brother. She said, let's make these books for my baby brother. So in the end, she created a series of some 40 or 50 books for her little brother. What a great thing to do at age 4 or 5. So the creative process can be partly you, and it can be partly her. But don't think you have to follow some rigid path of X amount of single words, X amount of couplets. If your child is into books, go with books, work backwards, and say, well, here's the book I want to do, but to do this book, I would have to have 30 words that she doesn't have right now. I would take some of the classics in English, a book like The Wind in the Willows. I know myself, I loved that book when I was a little kid. This would be a great book to steal the text and the beautiful little line drawings and make that available so a 5-year-old can read it. Right now, the only thing missing there is the big print. So bump up the print and steal from the classics, and you're pretty much home free. Keep up the good work. It sounds like you're doing a great, great job with your daughter. Mom says, this is from Laura, I started teaching my baby to read at 3 months. We are still using single words, but we're getting close to couplets and then 3-word sentences. So I'm preparing the material with the words that he already knows. My question is, I taught him verbs in a simple present tense, eat, play, walk. But for sentences, I'll need to use the verbs in other tenses. So if I want to put eating or ate in a sentence, I suppose I need to teach him first the conjugated verb as a single word. Is this correct? Well, you know, it's a very sophisticated question, and it shows you have a very good understanding of what you're doing. But the good news is that once we introduce a word like eat, and a child is able to differentiate the word eat from the word play, from the word walk. If we come back in a sentence and say, the elephant is eating the grass, the child has no problem making that leap in the text itself. it's true. We can make a set of verbs that say eating, playing, but when you pull those out and you've already taught eat, kid kind of is like been there, done that. I got the idea. So you will find that kids are more flexible. And remember, when you make a book like that, where you're saying the elephant is eating, the giraffe is sleeping, you're going to read that book many times. Your child is probably going to come back and say, again, mommy, I want to see that book again. So there's a lot of frequency there. And that's really what gets you over what looks like it would be an obstacle to you and I. That's what gets you over that. And the same thing is true of all the little connective tissue in language, like the and to and before. When you put those things into the text, the child quickly absorbs that information. We don't have to teach a whole set of words of the and prepositions and all of those other things. So I hope that makes sense. But it sounds, again, like you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. It looks like a lot of fun. Here's a mother. She says, I have an 18-month-old boy. We have the book, How to Teach Your Baby to Read. But I'm a mother with a full-time job. And unfortunately, I don't have enough spare time for my child. My question is frequency of showing the words. Is 2 times daily enough to teach a child? Or how to organize our daily program, the number of words, the number of sets, if we have very little spare time. Maybe 3 hours in the morning, maybe 3 hours in the evening. Should I show him 1 word longer for 7 days, for example, instead of 5 days? Well, this question is a very, very good question because it's very tempting, I'm sure. When you read a book like How to Teach Your Baby to Read, and we put out a whole kind of array of delicious things to do with your child, 5 categories of words, 5 words in a category, do them 3 times a day. It's very important that every mother and father who reads the book says, now, is that going to fit with the time I have with my child? Because we really, when we write our books, we write from the viewpoint of the full-time mother or the full-time father. We feel that's the right thing to do. That if we give the big picture, then the full-time mother or the full-time father can look at that and say, okay, this is the ideal way to do this. But we have to, in essence, say to the mother who doesn't have the good fortune to be a full-time mother, you have to be very disciplined. You can't just take a program that's designed for all day and shoehorn that program into an hour and a half in the morning or an hour and a half at night. Not long ago, I was lecturing in Singapore. And, Singapore mothers are really known around the world as tiger mothers. And they are tiger mothers. And I mean that in a good sense, not a bad sense. But one of the things that I say to 1,000 tiger mothers when I was lecturing there is, first of all, remember, tigers are very sweet with their little tiger cubs. They don't bite them. They don't harass them. They don't bully them. So if you're going to be a tiger mother, take a look at a tiger mother. They're very sweet and gentle and kind with their little cubs. And when I looked at really the biggest problem for those 1,000 tiger mothers, because after the lectures, they all lined up to ask questions. Their questions were all the same question. Well, I can't get the attention, the interest, the enthusiasm of my child. I hold up the words and he looks away. And I ask each of them the same question. What time are you doing your reading program? And they said, well, I don't get home till 6 o'clock at night. And I said, so you're doing a reading program with an 8-month-old baby at 6:30, something like, yes. And then what? Well, then I have to come back 10 minutes later and do another word. And then I come back to, they are taking a program that's meant to be spread over the whole day, and they're trying to shoehorn it into about an hour. And I said to those moms, I said, my answer to you, you're not going to like. This is not the right thing to do with the time you have with your baby. If you really only have a little time from the time you arrive home at night to when that baby goes to sleep, because babies don't go on mother's schedule, they have to sleep, then you shouldn't be running after your baby with a bunch of cards. You should get home, you should hug your baby, you should kiss your baby, you should talk to your baby. And when you get done that, you should start hugging your baby again and kissing your baby again. And you got to get to know your baby, because you've been away from your baby all day long. Your relationship with your baby can't be about a bunch of reading cards. We love the reading cards. We love the reading program. It's a wonderful program. But it's not the only thing. And if the only time you have with your child is the hour before your child goes to bed, then you better spend that time cuddling and kissing and hugging. It's not the time to be coming at your child with a lot of reading words. Maybe get out a nice little book, and together you read a book together. But in essence, you have to be able to look at your life and say, how can I do whatever I do with my child so that I'm doing the highest quality thing in the best way? What I would say to you, because it sounds like you're pretty much full-time working, if there's any way you can steal 2 real hours in the morning with your child. You know, some mothers work all morning and then they fight to get home so they can get home earlier. I would reverse that. I would fight to have the morning with your child. Fight to be with your child from the time your child wakes up until 11:30. If you could do that, that's the golden time. If you have from wake up to 11:30 or 12, that's the golden time of the day for the child. You can do so much in that time. You and your child will get to know each other. Then you can put in a little reading program. It can go very well because your child will be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and so will you. Then you go off to work, and baby has lunch, nap, downtime, graveyard shift is the afternoon with the baby anyway. And then when you come home, spend that time cuddling, kissing, and putting your child down to sleep. So my wish for you would be somehow to steal morning time. And a lot of mothers have found that they can renegotiate their time just to get 2 hours, 2.5 hours every morning. If you can do that, you could do a bang-up reading program in that time. And again, never try to shoehorn a program into a small space. Yes, your question is right. You could do the words twice a day instead of 3 times. But you know what? Trying to get ready in the morning and throwing words at your kid once, and then you come home in the evening and you're tired and the baby's tired and you're going to show them another time. It's not a good dynamic. It's not fun. It's not fun for the baby. It's not fun for you. It's not the right spirit. So if there's any way to rearrange your schedule, that would be ideal. Absolutely ideal. So it may not be the answer you want, but it is the answer. My name is Louise, and I have the question, when a baby receives a complete stimulation program, then later on as an adult, can he tell at a glance how many dots are on a card just by looking at it? Well, this father is referring to our math program. But again, let me generalize the question a little bit. When you show, whether it's reading words or if it's quantity cards, as we would do with dots, or bits of intelligence in our encyclopedic knowledge program, or maybe you introduce foreign language, any of those things you do with a tiny baby, if you just did them in the first year of life, and then for whatever reason, you abandoned them and you didn't do them again, they still would be stimulation for the baby. They still would help grow the brain. But if you came back 6 years later, 8 years later, and expected that that baby would speak that second language or remember some set of bits that you might have shown him when he was 6 months old, the chances are small that he would recall that. I think that's inevitable. But if, on the other hand, you teach those things and introduce them to the tiny baby, and then you continue on and you add layer upon layer, so that in the second year he learns about those bits and why they're significant, and he learns how to add, subtract, and multiply and divide. And in the third year, he starts doing a little bit of playing with a variable in math, and he's now doing little books on introductory botany and introductory physiology and introductory history. If, in essence, you're building a program that you're always adding to the information, you're always adding to the level of complexity, then later on as an adult, if you come back, well, can you hold up the 99 dots between the 98 dots to one of those babies, and will they know which is which? I can't really answer that because we don't go around doing that. Occasionally, some member of the media may come and they'll say to one of our staff kids who was raised on the program, what's this, what's that? And one time I remember that exact thing happened, and it was an 18-year-old. And they had pulled out a bunch of dots. They wanted to interview him, which they did. And then they pulled out a bunch of dots. They hadn't told him they were going to do that. And they said, what's this? And I think he said, oh, it looks like 68. He said, I have no idea, but I'm guessing 68. And the member of the media stopped and said, it is 68. No one was more shocked than our student. No one was more shocked. Now, was that a good guess? I don't know. And I don't think he knows either. I think the point is, it's not really important. What's important is that 18-year-old was a superb mathematician. Absolutely superb. Today he's a math teacher. That's what he does. But that was the point of teaching him those dots, not that he would particularly know 98 from 99 when he's 35 years old. So again, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but philosophically, I think the point is how well you can use the information in life to solve problems. And if the question is how well could he use that information as an adult to solve problems, the answer is incredibly well. Well, this is a question from Anna. My baby girl is 7 months old. I've been working on material to start the reading program. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous about it because there's no way to know if I'm doing it right. So here's my question. How do I know when I should move forward to the second step or the third step of the program? Is there a specific amount of words or time that you suggest for each step? I like this question because it gives me an opportunity to say, in the book, we haven't really answered this question. That's why this mother's asking it. It doesn't say in the book, now when you've done 50 words, now you do couplets. And when you've done 50 couplets, now you do phrases. Because we want mother to relax into being the teacher and to not be rigidly tied to a recipe or a formula. The most important thing in your reading program is that it's your reading program, and you're creating it based on what you see on your kid's face. I mean, every mother is going to start her reading program at a different time. Some mothers are going to start at 3 months, some mothers are going to start at 8 months, some mothers are going to start at 5 years. So if we gave a formula, it would possibly, that formula wouldn't fit any of those situations. So first of all, mother says, I'm nervous because there's no way to know if I'm doing it right. You know what? If you're relaxed and happy, if you're choosing the best times in the day, if you can see your baby is relaxed and happy, then you're doing it right. You don't need me or anyone to say this is the exact pathway that you need to follow. You're looking at your child and saying, she's enjoying this. This is great. And you know what? The day you say to yourself, well, I think it would be fun to add some couplets. There's no hard and fast rule. I mean, after you've taught 20 single words, if you can see that there are natural couplets that you could make with those words, make some couplets. Show them. Your child will be highly likely to be interested. And if your child is, you say, oh, she's enjoying couplets, let's add some couplets. So the whole point here is to be enjoying your baby and for your child to be enjoying you. And along the way, you see the thing your child likes, you do more of it. You see something your child is not interested, put it away. You are sculpting this program at every step to your child. You're saying, what's my child's ideal pathway? And by the way, when your next kid comes along, you're going to have to do the same thing all over again, because your next child is going to be completely different. You may pull out the words you did with the baby, and the next kid may have no interest in those words. So every child is unique. There are no two children who are the same. And your child is changing every day. So just because that worked well for you last week doesn't mean it's going to be the right thing for next week. You have to keep changing with your child, and that's a big challenge for mother. Mostly we like to find a way to do things and then keep it the same way. And in fact, that doesn't work. You've got to keep moving on. So don't be so worried. You're your kid's mother. You will know better than I what's the right moment to say, okay, let's do some couplets. That would be fun. And don't be afraid to move on to books. As I was saying earlier, you could do single word books right now. Babies love books. You can do couplet books right now. Mothers tend to spend too long on single words. It's very common for a mother to write and say, well, I've done 500 or 1,000 single words. And we say, how about books? And mom says, oh, no, I haven't gotten to books yet. Well, gee, that's a long runway. I mean, how long can a child be expected to flap his wings and go down a runway before he's allowed to take off and fly? And I think the answer is we don't want him chugging down that runway. We want him flying. So the sooner you can get to a book, whether it's single words, whether it's couplets, whether it's a whole sentence, the better. Because once you get to those books, then you'll see, the more books I make, the happier my child is. Now, mother has a second part to her question. She said, my husband and I are from South America, so we both speak Spanish at home much of the time. And when we go out, we speak English. I've been concerned about which language should I start teaching my baby first. Can I teach both languages at the same time? I know that when she starts going to preschool, everything is going to be in English, and I just don't want her to get confused. What are your suggestions? It's a very good question. It's a very common question. First of all, your baby will only be confused by the languages you don't speak. Your baby will not be confused by English. Your baby will not be confused by Spanish. You're fluent in both of these languages. So you should be using both of these languages all the time. To be able to give your child, right from day one, that bilingual environment is one of the most powerful things. All of us who are unilingual envy you and wish we had that ability to give to our babies. So don't waste a second on the thought you'd confuse your baby. The only people who think babies get confused by languages are people who are unilingual. You'll never find a bilingual or trilingual person who's worried about confusion because they knew they grew up in a home with 2 languages or 3 languages or 4 languages. Now, some mothers like to be organized about it, and it wouldn't be a bad idea if Spanish is your primary mother tongue and English is the secondary language, then it may be good to start in the morning with English. So from the time the baby wakes up until lunchtime, you speak only in English and you do your reading program in English. And if you're doing encyclopedic knowledge or math, everything is done in English. That makes it easy for you. Then you eat lunch. Now everything switches to Spanish. Reading is in Spanish, encyclopedic knowledge is in Spanish, everything is in Spanish. You know, I remember one of our moms was trilingual, and so she was dividing her day into 3. She would switch at about 10:30 in the morning from French to English, and in the end of the day, she used Spanish. And she said to me, it was funny because some days she would just forget to switch. And she said it was interesting because by 10:30, when I should have switched, if I didn't, my baby would start fussing. And he would fuss and fuss and fuss, and until he would just be screaming. And nothing would calm him down. Nothing I said, nothing I did. And then finally I'd say, oh, you know, I didn't switch. And the minute I would switch to English, she'd be like, oh, thank goodness. I mean, were we going to be stuck with French all day? You know, that would be unfair. So you can see, babies are linguistic geniuses. And the more languages we can present, the happier the baby is. So I would not have any considerations about putting both those languages front and center. And once you've done that, start thinking about what should be that 3rd language that we could learn together side by side. Mom asks, same mother, asks, once my baby and I get going well with the reading program, I'd like to start the math program. Is it okay to do both programs at the same time? Well, first of all, I like the first part of this question because you're very wise to make sure that your reading program is going well, that you're comfortable, you feel confident, you feel happy. Because what some mothers make the mistake, if it's not going quite right, they think, well, now I'll add math and now I'll add encyclopedic knowledge. No, you should not go on to adding something new until you've got the thing that you're doing going smoothly and well. You're comfortable with it. You know where you're going. You've established that good teaching rapport with your child. So that's number one. Once you start math, then you really want to consider the length of the session, because if you put the reading session and the math session together, probably for a young baby, it's not a good idea. I would keep them separate because you want to keep them short and sweet. You're in and you're out. As your baby gets more mature, then you'll see there comes a moment where it's more natural to put the 2 together. But I would say at the moment, I would not do that. Especially when you're introducing the math, I would keep it separate. Because you're going to, with math, you need to go very, very quickly for it to be successful. Well, this is a question from Meredith. And she asks, when I'm showing word bits to my 2-year-old, he wants to say the word after I say it. Should I discourage him from doing this or just let him? Well, of course, it's a natural thing for some kids to want to say the word after you say it, and that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that at all. It's probably a good thing. You just don't want to be in the position where you're insisting upon that or asking for performance from him. But if he wants to say it, that's absolutely great. Okay, I think we did that question already. So I'm going to look to Morgan to see if we have some that have come in.
Sure. One mother asks, how strict must we pay attention to the font and form of the words that we write on reading words?
So mother is asking about print size and how strict for the print size and maybe the form of the word. First of all, I think there are some of us who are perfectionists and we want every reading word we make to be absolutely beautiful and perfect. I'm that kind of person. I love to make sure the words look beautiful. And when you have now the technology of a printer and a computer, there's a temptation to want to do all the words that way. Then they're all beautiful and perfect. But I have to tell you, even as a perfectionist, that a mother using her computer and her printer side by side with a mother who's just got a stack of pre-cut cards and a red magic marker. That mother with the red magic marker, printing in nice legible print, she's going to produce a lot more words, a lot more quickly than the mother at the computer with the printer, because once they come out the printer, you have to trim them, then you have to glue them on the cards. So that process takes more time. And the one thing mothers don't have is time. So I've given up my perfectionist ways, and I'm perfectly happy writing out my own cards with a red magic marker. And you know, practice makes perfect. The more cards you make, the better they become. You do want to keep them big, and you want to be conservative about bringing that print size down. Certainly with a very young baby in the first 12 months of life, you're going to keep the print large. 2-year-olds, you might start to drop it in half. If you started when they were babies, their visual pathway can handle that. If you're starting day one with reading with a 3-year-old, we'd still start big. But then with the 3-year-old, you could probably drop that print size in half in a 6-month period and get away with it. So you're looking at the developmental stage of your child and how well your child converges, because it's really all about using 2 eyes together at near point. Tiny baby does not have good convergence. A 4-year-old should have much, much better convergence. But here's the thing. We always want the print size, whether it's a single word, whether it's a sentence card, or whether it's a book. I want, when I show a kid a book, the minute he opens that book, I want his first reaction to be, oh, this is so easy. I can read this. This is so easy. Rather than, oh, he's straining to see that word. He's straining to keep his place on the page. Anything that slows down reading will start to impinge on comprehension. These two things go hand in hand. So I always want that page to be a little bigger than it needs to be so that the kid says, oh, this is so easy. You know, you may not be at this point with your vision, but as we age, of course, vision can get to be a little worse. And there's a point where you and I sometimes look at that large print book or that large print, you know, the New York Times does a large print edition. And you see that and you go, oh, I'd love to have the paper look like that. So easy to read. And in fact, you and I will read it much faster because the print is bigger. So this is an issue throughout life. If you want to keep comprehension smooth and happy, make sure the print is big enough.
Here's another one. this mother says that her child is 8 years old and is not learning to read by the phonetic system, and so she's wondering what's the first step to get him reading.
This is a good question. A mom of an 8-year-old who is struggling learning to read, and in school they're using phonics to do so. You know, phonics is really a product of the fact that in our society, we've decided not to even begin the reading process until a child is in first grade, age 6 or age 7. This is too little, too late. It is the wrong time to begin to introduce reading. Can you imagine if we decided tomorrow that we weren't, for whatever reason, we weren't going to talk to kids when they were babies. We were going to wait till they got to first grade, and then we would put language down the auditory pathway. Can you imagine what a catastrophe that would be for our kids? They would have to learn, well, for an English environment, they'd have to learn English in its entirety, starting at age 6. Would they be way behind? Would they be disadvantaged? Would they be disadvantaged for the rest of their lives? Of course they would. And that's what we've done with the visual pathway. We've said, oh, no, we're not going to teach reading until that child is 72 months or older. It's insane. And because it's insane, of course, 30 or 40% of the kids in any classroom are struggling to read. They have a lot of problems. So we've come up with these strange and unusual ways of teaching reading, phonics chief among them. You know, if you've ever been subjected to that way of teaching, you know it's very bizarre and even infuriating to the child. So if that's where your child is, and this mother is saying, my child is failing to learn to read that way, yes, you simply start with single words, make them nice and big, give your child a total, complete break from phonics. I'd begin there, and you will succeed with single words as long as you keep the print size big. But also you want to make sure that your child doesn't have a visual problem. Take your child to the eye doctor. Look at convergence. Find out, does your child have a problem with convergence that's slowing down reading? Ask your eye doctor, is there any laterality issue? Is my child using their dominant eye? Because, you know, when you and I read, we choose the dominant eye to lead, the subdominant eye follows. If that does not happen, if you have two eyes trying to lead, you end up with reversals. Saw looks like was looks like saw. Numbers flip over. This creates huge problems for the child. So do a little bit of evaluation there just to see if there isn't another neurological reason that your child is struggling. And yes, by all means, start with single words, couplets, make materials for your child, get good materials, high-level, interesting content for your child, and see if you can't bail out that 8-year-old.
The next one is, from your experience, do children have an easy time learning phonetics once they have learned whole words? And do you recommend breaking down whole words to explain phonetics?
Okay, here's a mom asking about phonetics and the relationship between that and a child who's already learned how to read. If you have already taught your child how to read and he goes to school reading, he doesn't need phonetics. And he's going to see phonetics as kind of asinine, and that's because it's kind of asinine. So that's what's going to happen. But again, if you go to school reading, I've never known of a school that insists that a child is put through phonetics if he's already reading at a 4th grade level. He goes to the library and he reads books. So I don't think we have to imagine a world that crazy. Because if you've ever seen the phonetics section of a standard reading test, I promise you, as an adult, if you tried to take it, you would not be, it's just so crazy. you would protest and say, why would I be doing something as crazy as this? I can read. And that's the point, to be able to read.
Another one is, when teaching 3 languages during the day, do I show the same word in the 3 different languages, or do I show him different words?
Oh, and this is a mom asking about second and third languages. And I'm happy you've asked this question. She's saying, okay, if I divide my day in 3 as you propose, and I am teaching reading, am I teaching the same set of reading words 3 times? And the answer is, yeah, you could be, but I don't recommend it. And the reason is that it's a lot more fun if in each of those languages you're doing something different. So I would say lead the reading program in the mother tongue is going to be further advanced than it is in the secondary or the tertiary tongue. So if you're doing 3 reading sessions, 1 in French, 1 in Spanish, 1 in Russian, then I would use different words. And just on a gradient, maybe the words that you used for your primary language 3 months ago are now appearing in the secondary language, and then they're going to switch to the tertiary language a month from now. That just makes for such a great diet. I mean, the kid is just going to have so much fun with that, and you will too. You will too. Now, I have to say, kids are linguistic geniuses, and you may make a great battle plan. I may make a battle plan I like, but your kid may be otherwise. He may insist. He may say, let's do all these words, Mom. You know, you may be saying, we're doing French right now. He may say, yeah, but let's do them all in English. We'll do them in English. And then he may say, well, now we're going to do them all in Spanish. Okay, let's do them in Spanish. He may start calling the shots and wanting to teach you, this is what we're going to do. And if you're smart, you'll go with that battle plan. I know some 3-year-olds who are already in the driver's seat, and they're already, you sit down with their materials and they've got the whole day planned out as to what we're going to do next and how we're going to do it, and then we're going to match these words with the countries, and then mother can just say, okay, I like your curriculum, let's go with that.
The next one is, why do you do red and black, like red versus black letters, and at what point do you change over to black letters? Yeah,
the question about the color. We use red letters for a simple reason. It's attractive. It's attractive. But that said, as you drop print size, black is a lot easier when the print gets smaller. You have much better contrast. So it's just a matter of when you start dropping that print in half or in a third, we would go to black. And of course, with a newborn baby, baby right at birth, if we're doing visual stimulation, then everything we're doing is black and white, everything.
What size would you start at with a 6-year-old? What font size?
Well, if you're starting with a 6-year-old, you obviously have a child whose convergence, he's had 6 years to develop convergence, so his convergence is a whole lot better than a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. So probably you could use half the print size that we recommend in the book. So, you know, instead of 3 inches, you could start with 1.5 inches, something like that. And I have to say, keeping the words big, they're more fun. So making 1.5 inches, it's more fun, and it's also easier for you to actually hold the cards. Once the cards get teeny tiny, then it's a lot harder to use them. And if you're teaching more than one child at the same time, it's better to keep them big because 2 kids can look at them or 3 kids can look at them. So don't be too eager to make the print tiny, especially with single words, because it makes it harder to teach them.
Mother asks, how do I organize my program in terms of physical versus the reading program?
Yeah, for mothers who are doing a physical program, maybe some reading, maybe encyclopedic knowledge, maybe some math, maybe foreign language, or even music, there comes a moment where, oh, gee, how do I put this all together? And I have to say that the very best way to do that is to create a little course that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you take a set of reading words and you put that right next to the sofa. And you take some bits and you put them by the stairs. And you take some foreign language bits and they're in the dining room. So all around the house, you've got little stations with materials. And there's a book, you know, right at the end of these stations that you're creating. And then you make your physical program around those stations. So you say, okay, we're going to crawl around the dining room table 3 times. Oh, look, there's some reading words here. Now we're going to creep into the living room. Oh, look, there's some bits. Let's see them. So you make a little course. And that course might take in total 10, 12 minutes, 15 minutes to complete. And it has bits in it, reading, math, some music, some foreign language. It has crawling, creeping, maybe somersaulting, maybe rolling, maybe a little brachiation. It's a little bit of everything. And in 12 minutes, you do 1 circuit. You know, as soon as you finish that circuit, you know what your kid says? Again. Let's do it again, Mom. And this time you come back and you change everything at the stations. You say, oh, I have to set it up. Change everything at the station. Then you come back and you do it again. You can get, if you did a little course like that and you started at 8:30 in the morning, you can probably do that course in the morning 4 or 5 times. You will cover so much material. You will have gotten so much physical program done. And the morning just zooms by because essentially children love structure and they love stimulation and they love opportunity. So when we organize it in such a way, they always know what's next, which they love. They love to know what's next. And they always want there to be something that's next. I mean, the pressure that kids put on their mothers. Again, Mommy? More, Mommy? Why, Mommy? What's next, Mommy? That's a hard pressure to live with. And especially if you have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old hitting you with that. That little course, you can line up all 3 of your kids. You all do that little course together. And you can change it, you can add to it, you can make it a little shorter, you can make it a little longer, but you will accomplish a huge amount in a very short period of time. And that's the time. Take the phone off the hook. Turn off the cell phone. Don't allow anything to interrupt that time. And you will find that you get to the end of it, it's lunchtime. And you say, wow, they've run me out of materials. We've done our entire physical program. Gee, what's left? I guess we could all get together after lunch and clean the house if we have to, or go for a nature walk or whatever. So it works really well, and it's an awful lot of fun. Well, our time has gone so fast. I thank you for all your questions, and keep them coming, and we'll be back to answer them again.